Right, the bells were just tolled, so it must be 6:30. So, without further ado, we'll get on. I'm Paul Harper, I'm the chair of this committee, and I welcome everybody here and anybody who might watch the webcast later to our latest meeting of Planning and Healthier, Stronger Communities Policy Advisory Committee meeting. Perhaps at the next cycle we can make a few more words on the title, make it sound even more exciting. Right, so the meeting's being webcast by the council as normal. I just wondered if anybody else wished to webcast or hold their right to.
I reserve my right to, if I may.
Okay, thank you. There's no planned fire alarms tonight, so if the alarms do go off, Cassie will go and investigate and then come and tell us what to do. But that's never happened yet while I've been in the meeting here for just over 10 years, so I think it's unlikely tonight. So that takes us on to number one, which is apologies for absence. We've got Councillor Wilkinson's apologies, and that takes us to item two, which is substitute members.
Substituting for Councillor Wilkinson.
Thank you. And item three, we don't have any urgent items, but I'm just going to suggest that when we get to item 10 and item 11, which are both on the Article 4 direction, and Victor House be taken just as one item and one debate. No point doing it twice. Is everyone happy with that? Yep. Okay, so notification of any visiting members. I can't see any or any on the screen. So number 5, which is disclosures by members and officers. Anyone got anything to disclose? Councillors or officers tonight? No? Or anyone any evidence of lobbying? No. That takes us on to number 7, which is to consider whether any item should be taken in private because of their possible disclosure of exempt information. Well, I think everyone here should be done in public. Everybody happy with that? Yep. Okay, so that takes on to item 8, which is minutes of our meeting on the 4th of February. I'll just run through the page numbers quickly in case anyone's got anything. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 and 7, so I think we can agree those as correct, since no one's challenged. Okay, which brings us on to item, if we can get through this quickly, we should be finished within 10 minutes. Item number 9, which is the forward plan relating to the committee's terms of reference. So if we can turn to page 8, where it starts off, and Councillor Clark.
Thank you. I really just wondered if there was an update about the Lewes conservation area plan. When we heard it at this committee, it was alongside of East Farley and Boxley, and I know it was delayed, but I just wondered if we could have an update from officers.
Good afternoon. It's likely we go back to public consultation the end of April, May, because we have received so many comments, so we want to create a better draft as it's been lapsed. I think it's a good opportunity to improve the appraisal that we sent in back of September the 3rd. Yeah.
I would make an appeal to bring it forward if we could, if there's any opportunity to do that.
No, I'm saying that the September is when we ask for public consultation. Okay. But we don't need to ask again, so we're going back on April, May, and it's likely on summer we're going to adopt.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you.
I just wanted to ask, we talked about the walking and cycling plan, which we've raised a couple of times, and we realised we could only do something smaller based on the time restrictions, and we never heard back from KCC, but it seems to have dropped off the radar completely.
I'll ask Mark Edgerton to reply because I actually contacted him last week or the week before on this subject. So Mark,
Yeah, thank you very much. As Councillor Harper says, there's been a little bit of interest resurging in that one. Yeah, it's still on officers' radar, so just some reassurance that's the case. We have obviously been focusing on key matters such as preparing ourselves for local government reorganisation and also the current Gypsy and Traveller Development Plan document as well, which needs to be sent out on consultation. We'll be bringing a report to the next Policy Advisory Committee on the local plan, new local plan, and it will be June for the Gypsy and Traveller Development Plan document as well. So officers at the moment are aiming to get everything kicked off and ready for autumn when it comes to dealing with the new local walking and cycling matters, notwithstanding the fact, of course, that Kent County Council are the highway authority and will proceed in their own system. We still think there's value to be had by members of this council. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. So we look forward to it in the autumn. If there's nothing else, can we agree to note the item? Yeah. Which takes us on to items 10 and 11, which are the reference from the council on the potential Article 4 direction for Invicta House and then the potential Article 4 direction for Invicta House. So if I can ask Councillor Harwood to introduce the report.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. The report that starts on page 12, and I think really importantly, the appendix at page 32, the letter the Borough Council has received from the KCC, respond to the motion that was considered at full council on the 3rd of December, seeking an Article 4 direction for Invicta House. And it was agreed at full council that the matter will be considered by this committee. The report sets out the main considerations and ramifications associated with an Article 4, and also sets out some other issues, background around legislative context and so on. However, I you know, speaking as a ward councillor and the you know, kind of local representative for the area, personally, I feel that we need to take a strategic approach to our remaining office stock if we're going to maintain a viable mixed economy in the town centre, and have real concerns around, just because of the current economic and position, if we turn the town into wall-to-wall flats, it will significantly change the whole functioning of the town centre going forward. So I think Invicta House is a specific building, and I think it is really well located with its proximity to the East Station and the A229 to be a good location for employment. But I think there is other office stock within the town centre which is vulnerable. I do thank the movers of this, because it flushed out the fact that, quite unbeknownst, I think, to all members, that the Article 4 on office stock in the town centre had actually lapsed and not been renewed. And if it weren't for this motion, I think we would have gone on in blissful ignorance, thinking that office stock was protected. So I think there is a bigger issue here. And just as kind of finally, I mean, genuinely, on recent form of my discussions with the County Council on a range of issues, regardless of the letter at page 32, I frankly trust KCC about as far as I can throw County Hall at the moment. And they're genuinely not a serious partner for discussion around what is best for the borough. And I think we need to take our destiny into our own hands if we are going to go forward. And there is a glimmer of light in that the rules around Article 4s have been slightly loosened in recent weeks and months. And I think you've seen Article 4's being successfully implemented by some other local authorities near and far, which was not the case for a while. The former National Planning Policy Framework policy, essentially it was so difficult to get an Article 4. I think will need to do a lot of research and underpin with evidence, but I do not discount the potential for us being able to prove that we do need to safeguard certain locations in the town. Thank you.
Okay, before I move this to debate, I just wanted to say a few words on myself, and there's a couple of questions. So, obviously read this with interest. I notice in paragraph 2.22, the officers say there's examples where the Secretary of State has intervened on a large number of attempted Article 4 directions. No number. I mean, that might be 1, might be 2, might be 555. There's actually no examples or information to actually validate that statement. So perhaps first of all, perhaps if I could ask the officers if they could give us a bit more validation around that.
Yeah, thank you very much. There's a couple of things here. The first thing to say is that MHCLG produce on their website a list of all the Article 4 directions where the Secretary of State has considered, altered, intervened and so forth. We are talking a long list here, more than one, probably into the probably 12, 15 and beyond. Now there's some context I need to provide members with here. The majority of interventions that took place went to about 2024 and then dried up. So that's the first factual piece of context that members need to be aware of. The second thing that I'd like to draw to your attention is a reference that was made by Councillor Harwood in his introduction. I'd like to factually clarify the position with regards to the National Planning Policy Framework. Having dug a little bit into this, paragraph 54 is the reference within the current National Planning Policy Framework, but the government are consulting at the moment on the planning reforms. Members will recall potentially last meeting we took a report with our proposed response. In that consultation, the government are proposing to allow greater flexibility in respect of Article 4 directions. So the bar at the moment is extremely high in the current National Planning Policy Framework, but there is proposed to be significant increase in flexibility in the new National Planning Policy Framework, which of course may well come out shortly as the consultation is due to finish on the 12th actually of this month. So there's a couple of things there. I think hopefully that helps for members. Thank you.
Thank you for that, Mr. Edgerton. My other point, and I'd actually noted that paragraph, the one you've just referred to, which is for everybody else, it's in paragraph 219, which are the current rules on which Article 4s are assessed. I noticed, obviously, as you've referred to, Councillor Harwood, you've got this letter from Kent County Council. Well, I've read it twice now, just to make sure that I hadn't missed anything. And what it doesn't say, it does not rule out conversion of Invicta House to either flats or an HMO. I think it just says, what does it say here? It refers to high quality, doesn't it? But you can have a high quality HMO, because on the second page there is no immediate danger of the property being converted into low quality HMO accommodation, and that's it, that's all they've said. So it could literally be anything. So I think I would just suggest, to help frame the debate tonight, that from the chair I will move option 2. Sorry? Well, I was only going to move at something which just frames it, and then we can debate around that and then take any amendments, because I know Councillor Clark which is to move an amendment. I just thought it would get it going. So that the Cabinet be recommended to proceed with an immediate Article 4 direction in respect of non-residential to residential use of Invicta House. That would be in full support of the will of the Council at our previous meeting. And as I say, there's really nothing in this report evidencing that that's not likely to be successful. So I'd like to formally move that now and then open it up to debate. So I've got Councillor Clark, Councillor Mackay and Councillor Russell.
Thank you, Chairman. So this came to what was strategic planning in 2018 initially, and it was at a time when we got permitted development on office spaces. All of our neighbours, Ashford, Tunbridge Wells, Tunbridge, Canterbury, all took their right to seek Article 4 protection for their best office spaces. Maidstone, I actually proposed it at the committee in 2018 and it fell, and I called it in and that fell. So we actually we had a target on our back really, because if a London authority was looking into Kent, they were seeing Maidstone as being relatively happy to have permitted development rights. I worked with Rob Jarman for a year, culminating in 2019. Rob had advised that we needed to get survey evidence for the best office spaces rather than just saying best office spaces. We needed evidence. So we worked on that, and a year later we brought it forward, and that received complete cross-party support because it was something that was of great benefit to the borough to actually protect our best office spaces. As Councillor Harwood mentioned, it lapsed in 2022, and now we're in a situation where it is admirable that we're trying to protect Invicta House. It wasn't on the original list because at the time it was felt that buildings that were being used by authorities weren't at risk. But obviously things have now changed slightly. I think the letter from KCC should sharpen minds a little bit because there's two approaches, and I think that I'd like to suggest the approach that I feel that would be the best way forward. If we just put forward Invicta House and we say it's at risk of being converted or a use that we don't necessarily want for the town, it can look to KCC, as you look from this letter, that we're being very pointed about an individual case. And I think that can be open to challenge. I think if that goes to court and they were to say, why are we being targeted? You could say, well, it's only because this came on the market that we went after it. If we take more of a strategic approach and we actually look to protect our 14 best properties which have been surveyed, we've got the data, we actually had the opportunity to renew them, so we're not going to start all over again with those. In actual fact, if anything, it's Invicta House that's going to need that data to bring it up to speed with those other 14. But if we take a view that we're not doing this because Invicta House might be sold, we're doing it because we want Maidstone Borough to be a vibrant place where people can enjoy living, working and leisure, we can say that is our focus, and it just so happens that Invicta House falls within that, because it is now something that could be converted. Before it wasn't, it was part of the authority. So I think that letter, if anything, is a good litmus test for what might happen if we only protect one. And I do think that Maidstone can become a bedroom community if we just we let it ride and we let these 14 offices that were genuinely considered at that time to be our best office spaces, if we let them be converted without any collection of funds from the planning process. So we don't collect any money from schools, for education, for schools, for NHS, for the roads. There's no parking standards when you've got permitted development. So these can be the most harmful developments in the town using our best office spaces. So I think that I would urge members to support an amendment, and my amendment is that the Head of Planning and Economic Development advance a case for protecting the borough's 14 best commercial vehicle buildings as identified by the Strategic Planning and Infrastructure Committee of 10th of September 2019 for renewed Article 4 protection after the original protection lapsed in 2022, and in addition extend protection, Article 4 protection to Invicta House. And I think that's the most robust way that we can do this, because we will be looking at something strategically. Each of the owners of those properties can come forward and say, why are we being targeted? We're not targeting them. We're just looking to make the town centre a better place, or at least maintain the vibrancy of the town centre going forward. So that would be my amendment.
Can I just clarify one point, Brian? Are you looking, because there's the two types of Article 4, aren't there? There's the immediate one, or which is, if you like, urgent, which comes straight in, or the other one takes a year.
I think we should seek officer recommendation on this, but I would say the evidence has already been gathered for the 14. We've got the data, and we've had them protected. So I see no reason why we couldn't do an automatic for those. But my concern is we might have to do a delayed Article 4 for Invicta House, given the fact that we could be at risk of costs. But I'd be interested in officers' feedback on that.
Mr. Edgerton, if you want to comment on that.
Thank you very much. Yeah, I just want to pick up on the immediate versus non-immediate situation. The evidence that is required will need to be up to date. At the time of writing the report, officers were not in receipt of sufficient evidence, but there's a little bit of more context, I think, that I can give to this now. First of all, members must consider the ramifications of issuing an immediate Article 4 directions from the point of view of compensation. It could potentially be significant. It isn't just limited to the planning application changes, any additional build costs or anything like that. It's also limited to work which has already been undertaken, preliminary investigations and so forth that were undertaken with a wider remit and ability in mind that would be restricted by an Article 4 direction. So officers' advice wouldn't necessarily be at this stage that we would advise towards a non-immediate Article 4 direction and avoid the potential for significant compensation. I mean, that's set out in the legislative section of the report itself. I'd also just like to bring to members' attention the fact that it doesn't necessarily follow that we would not get any community infrastructure levy from a prior notification. Now, if the prior notification was successful, then that development could be liable to pay community infrastructure levy as well. There's a couple of things here in terms of the evidence. I said about the wider context. I think officers would need to advise that focusing on one single property, whilst the government's guidance does say keep it to the smallest possible area, one property, I'm afraid, is probably far too small. If the issue applies to one property, there's probably going to be other properties that we need to catch in the net as well. Now, that's my technical advice. And what I can say on the evidence point of view to members is that since the report has been written, I have been made aware that from conversations with the head of housing, John Littlemore, that we are working, including with the Ministry of Justice, on seeking to define and identify an exclusion area in Maidstone Town Centre that will be robust and defendable. That's the aim of this exercise for specific properties that potentially could be caught by an Article 4 direction. So officers are doing work in the background. They're working actively in the background because they appreciate the concerns of members. It is work with the Ministry of Justice as well. We haven't defined that area yet specifically, but obviously I think from an officer point of view, from a technical point of view, we'd like the opportunity to have the most robust case possible, and that would be more than one property that was affected, and it would be worked up in conjunction with the relevant external bodies as well, as I've described. So hopefully that provides some insight. Thank you.
Thank you. I think that's quite clear. The only thing I'd say, Grant, but is that if we go with the non-immediate, then it's a year's consultation, which would presumably lead to the end of March 2027. And then, of course, the council will then be in purdah for the local elections to the shadow authority, to our successor authority. So the first cycle of meetings will be after the annual meeting. So the earliest anything would come back is going to be June 2027. And depending on what the Section 24 notice, which will have been served on us, will say, it may be that a decision like this may need to be done in conjunction with our successor authorities, one of which is Kent County Council. But we won't know that until we get to October. So I'm just saying that, yeah, I just wanted to put that there so that we're aware that if we do non-immediate, whilst it gives you time for the evidence, the likelihood is that nothing will be in place before June 27 at the earliest. And we don't know what our decision-making powers will be at that point either at the moment. I'll take Malcolm, Claudine, and then I'll come to you, Claire. So, Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. I've almost forgotten what I was going to ask now. What I am confused about is that I was a councillor up to May 22, and I've been a councillor since May 24. And I do recall that these 14 buildings come up then. And there was a proposal to have this article there. And the decision at that council meeting, would that have been prior to May 22? Or since May 24?
The last time this was voted on was September 2019, and that's when they were made. They were put forward for Article 4.
Christ, I didn't think my memory went back to 19. Well, 2019. It certainly doesn't go back to 19, when I was 19. Best forgotten, really. Other than Rome. But anyway. So I do remember something of this. And I do remember the various arguments, but they're just being respun tonight. I suppose I've got a question. Why did the council officers allow the restrictions to lapse? Why was it not brought before the then cabinet, the then council?
I refer the councillors to paragraph 2.18. That's, I think, as far as I can go with that one. Thank you.
What the hell is that then? What is 2.1?
Councillor Mackay,
26.
I'm referring to the report, which is
beg
taken as read.
I only agreed to be sub yesterday afternoon. So, forgive me. Two point one. Oh, beg pardon.
Page 26, Malcolm.
Yeah, I got it. Yeah, I got it. Is it on? So it was under our current administration. 22. Article 14 directives lapsed on the 1st of August 2022. and the new ones were never agreed by the government. So they lapsed under this administration.
This administration came in May 2024, 2 years after they
Beg your
lapsed.
pardon. All right. Okay. Enough for throwing stones or whatever I was throwing. But how long, if we wish to apply for whatever the current regulations is now, and with current view, how long would it take us to protect all 14 buildings that were originally proposed previously? To gather the evidence, submit a proposal?
Through you, Chair. Thank you very much. Yes, so there's two types of Article 4 direction. There's an immediate and there's a non-immediate. If we go with an immediate Article 4 direction, officers will then give consideration. It's a legal matter rather than a policy matter, so there's some legal hoops would need to go through. That would involve as well consultation with those affected by the land which was going to be subject to the Article 4 direction. We need to get legal lined up and the evidence. So we could be talking, in theory, probably about 3 months to get the immediate Article 4 direction there through the consultation and done. Add a year potentially for the non-immediate, because there's a whole year with an Article 4 direction which is non-immediate, which avoids the ability for those who are affected to claim compensation. So those are the sort of timescales I think we might be working towards.
Okay, that seems. And you're also saying that it would be best if all 14 went forward at once rather than a single unit.
I think I need to clarify that point. Certainly not a single unit. I don't think that is correct, because I think the ability for one unit means that other units will also fall. They'll be caught in that same umbrella, if you like. But when it comes to 14, that's a proposal from Councillor Clark, not from officers. In response to that matter, I raised with councillors that there was work with the head of housing, John Littlemore, with the Ministry of Justice, where they were seeking to create an exclusion zone and identify that, and that would capture all sort of current offices within that exclusion zone. So I asked if it was possible for us to perhaps also gain, as in order to achieve robust evidence, more insight into that exclusion zone as well, so that might act as a basis for things, not just saying for the 14 that were previously there, given the fact that we'd also need fairly fresh evidence to support the Article 4 direction, rather than just relying on what occurred in 2019-20 onwards. Thank you.
So my understanding from what your answer is that it could be more, could be less, and that the advice you're giving now is contrary to that which was given previously when this came before, a similar proposal came before council. And it was decided then that by focusing on Session House only, it was likely to be more successful. That was my recollection of.
If I may help, that was a member debate in full council. There was an officer briefing note, but the officer briefing note was just about Invicta House. So I don't think the wider policy issues that Mr. Edgerton has raised really came into the debate at full council. I think that's the beauty of, I think, this committee, allowing something to be looked at in a far wider way.
And you're clear, so I don't want to hog all this, but that it would be better to look at the 14 houses, 14 units, and reappraise whether it's still appropriate for those to either drop off some, add in some, yeah? To look at it afresh, yeah?
I think we need up-to-date evidence to define an exclusion zone. Whether or not that includes all 14 units or goes beyond is yet to be seen, but I'm very keen to give our colleagues in housing the opportunity to identify that with the Ministry of Justice.
Okay, so the next speaker I've got Claudine, Claire, and then Brian at the moment.
Thank you. Yes, this was my proposal. So, but a lot of what I wanted to clarify about the immediate versus the non-immediate has been answered. Thank you, Mr. Edgerton, and the still as well, because I always like to ask about that, but you clarified that. My question is, obviously we had original Article 4s, and then we've still got an Article 4 on the shopping area and 6 buildings that are offices. So we've got County House, which is obviously up in that area. So when you're thinking of the potential new Article 4, that's why I just mentioned about Invicta House, because I figured you already had some on that area existing. But I'd be very happy for it to be widened and have a look at, maybe revising all of it and putting a new one in that covered that. I don't know whether you could do the shopping and the offices, or have to do those separately. So that would be one of my questions. And then with regard to the 14 building, I don't really have a handle on where they would be geographically. So, and I note that in paragraph 54 that Mr. Edgerton referred to, it does say it should apply to the smallest geographical area possible. And the evidence bar, whilst not as high as it was, we still need to have it. So I wouldn't want to hamper ourselves by having, I don't know where the 14 are, by having a massive geographical spread. So I don't know whether we could perhaps word it, I'm happy to widen it, but word it whether we could have a bit more freedom to leave to the officer on this, because obviously they're the experts, we're not. I think we all know what we're trying to achieve for that area of town, and what we're trying to not achieve is a poor quality, change to resi with no seal contributions for all the things that we would need, like Councillor Clark said, highways, education, all of that. So I think the spirit of it we have, and obviously it was a cross-party will of full council, so I would feel confident in saying that a great number of our members would be behind it as well. But the detail, I don't want to hamper us with, but I'd appreciate a bit of guidance from Mr. Edgerton on that. Those 2 points, please.
Thank you very much indeed. Yeah, I mean, it is possible for us to consider shop uses as well. I think there's a little bit of context just to provide some clarity on. This gets a bit techy, apologies. So the overall commercial side of things, including office these days, office used to have its own use class. That's classed MA, that's class MA, but there's also an overall class M, and that deals with laundrettes, betting offices, payday loan shops and so forth. So we could bring that in technically into the sort of Article 4 if we wish to do so as well. And I'm grateful to Councillor Russell for raising the second point. The concern that I would have from a technical point of view of just reverting, no disrespect to Councillor Clark, because I think it's absolutely right that we should go beyond the single unit, and I understand the context from Councillor Russell. So grateful to Councillor Clark, but I think what we've got to do is define that area on the best available evidence, robust evidence. We'll still, no matter what happens, this will still end up at the desk of the Secretary of State. And the Secretary of State will still need to make a decision as to whether or not we've been reasonable and used robust evidence. So let's get some up-to-date, robust evidence rather than using the old evidence and saying, well, it's just going to be those 14 previous units. It may well be that the research which is being undertaken with the Ministry of Justice defines a different safeguarding area. And that gives us an opportunity to safeguard the area that the Secretary of State would tolerate. I'm concerned that if we did use just the 14 buildings and old evidence, then the Secretary of State would say, well, come on, you haven't actually attempted to update this, and it's not based on robust evidence that is currently available. So that's why there's a nuance in what I'm saying. So, Councillor Russell, in answer to your question, let's see if officers can come up with something which is up to date and robust, and start to use that as a starting point for defining the area.
Thank you. I mean, I didn't do the proposal, so I don't know if the proposer and the seconder might be minded to take that on board, what Mr. Edgerton's just said. But just one final point really is that exactly what the chair picked up, the letter from KCC has left unanswered ambiguities. So I'm not fully confident in the gold plating of that letter. So moving on now.
Thank you, Councillor Russell. I think there's quite a few extra things have come up, and I think since we started the debate, this issue of this exclusion zone has been raised, which wasn't in the papers at all, and it potentially muddies the situation a bit, doesn't it? Because and I just wanted to clarify one thing which might help. So when rather than talking about the 14 buildings, I think we should just talk about it'll be 15, and Invicta House just needs to be added in there, rather than having it listed separately, if that's the route we're going. Yeah. But can you have sort of an Article 4 which is just on, say, 15 sites? Because obviously these offices stretch right across from Knight Rider Street up to Invicta House, out down to Maidstone House and Albion Place. I mean, effectively, they're scattered around the whole of the town centre, where you probably expect these types of buildings to be. But would we be able to do, say, an Article 4 just on specific buildings, or would it have to cover the whole geography? Because I'm just thinking, if we're covering the whole geography, that is effectively going to be the town centre to get these 15 buildings in.
Yeah, two things on that. I'll be brief. First of all, apologies to members. Genuinely, since we were writing that report, it became a focus for officers at the time of writing that report. We weren't, able to assimilate evidence. We didn't think we could get the evidence together, but actually, work has progressed. We're aware that members are concerned about it, and that's what's resulted in the work by John Littlemore's team and so forth to see if they can identify this exclusion zone. And I think for clarity, what I would anticipate happening at this stage, rather than a blanket Article 4 covering quite a wide geographical area, which would generally still go against the government's intentions, we'd identify the exclusion zone, and then we'd identify the specific buildings that fell within it, and they would be subject to that Article 4. Yeah.
Thank you for that. Councillor Keeley next.
Thank you, Chair. I've got a lot of what I was thinking has been said, but I've got a couple of questions if you could help out with this. This time frame that we've talked about, now is that a legal defined time frame if you must consult for X amount of months? This process has to take 12 months, argument's sake, or is that something that we can speed up, slow down? Is that down to workload? And bearing in mind that obviously with the local government review coming in, we are going to have serious pressures on our house building area, and we need to get this decided. Is it something that we can achieve before this administration and our council is dissolved, or is it not? That's point one. Do you want me to do it point by point? Yeah, and I'll come back with other points if that's okay. Thank you.
Yeah, there's two things here on the timetabling. One is fixed, the other one is a little bit more flexible. So the thing that is fixed, if we go with an immediate Article 4 direction, it is immediate, subject to the evidence being gathered. But if we do a non-immediate Article 4 direction, 12 months is 12 months, it's set out in law, we can't change that. So that's the first bit. The second bit is officer preparatory time to assemble the robust evidence to give us the best possible chance of the Secretary of State allowing us to keep the Article 4 direction once we are obliged by law to notify the Secretary of State. So what we want to do is just be in that best possible position. And I'm recommending 3 months as a rough approximation to allow the team to assemble the evidence. We will need to do a consultation. That consultation I don't think is defined by legislation off the top of my head. We normally do 6-week consultations as a minimum as an authority. I remember back in, I think it was 2018-19 when we did our original designations, I think we gave them 6 weeks then. So, I'm factoring in those sort of times into the overall approximation of 3 months. But there is a degree of flexibility within that, but not with the 12 months if we go non-immediate.
Thank you for clarifying that. So with that in mind, is it, because I think we're all agreeing that we want to get the best possible result for Mason. I don't think anybody is disputing that. And I think the fact of making sure that these properties, these buildings are protected is key. Is it possible to have two groups, one that's immediate and one that's not so immediate? So, because my concern is if it takes 12 months and then it falls after May 2027, what guarantees have we got that if we've said that's what we're going to do, that's what the people want to happen, that will happen going forward? And I'll just sneak in my last point about the exclusion zone. Can I just ask why the Ministry of Justice are involved? Because it's bewildered me. Thank you.
Okay. The points around the Ministry of Justice first. A lot of what we want to do is to be able to assemble an evidence primarily based on social concerns in and around the town centre. And a number of the issues which we have witnessed have potentially been caused by the placement into the converted offices of specific groups and individuals, there's including gangs and so forth, and there is a clear coordination problem in that regard. Now, we're talking well outside of planning's remit here and potentially the remit of this committee, but just to answer that question as clearly as possible, some of the placements are undertaken through the Ministry of Justice. Now, some of those placements are also undertaken through authorities within London and so forth, but the Ministry of Justice is a prime example, and that's why they are working with us to help coordinate things in terms of the social issues which may arise. So that's why the Ministry of Justice are involved. And I do apologise, Councillor Keeley, can you just repeat the first bit so that I can answer that one, because that I was so impressed with my response on that one that I've just completely forgotten the first bit. I do apologise.
I think you're forgiven, Mark. Thank you. It was about, would it possible to, with what you've said about the time frames, and like I said, I think we all want to protect what we can and make sure that we leave things as tidy and as good as we can. I don't think anybody's disputing that, and we're all working for the same thing. Is there a potential to do an immediate thing on a smaller group that we deem to be absolute top priority, and a longer term thing on the other half of it that we want to happen, but it might not be such a disaster if, for whatever reason, it wasn't done in time? And I think the other tail end of that question was, what guarantees have we got that if we get it started, sorted, and we say this is what we're going to do, it will be honoured? Thank you.
Yeah, this is, I probably did remember it was just too hard. Okay, the concern that I personally have from a technical point of view of trying to split them into two groups is the difference in evidence that we'd be able to justify some going into one hat, some going into the other hat. We'd have to have fairly clear and robust evidence that would allow us to take on not only the Secretary of State and the risk associated with that being not approved by the Secretary of State, but also that additional risk of justifying the compensation that may well be payable to those that are caught within the immediate group as well. So to me, officers will always be advising members of this committee and obviously Cabinet against an immediate Article 4 direction unless there is absolutely clear and necessary reason for doing so, which would outweigh the potential for significant compensation that would be accrued and payable by this authority. So it almost answers the question in its own right that officers would necessarily say non-immediate Article 4 direction is the most risk-aware approach and would probably be where we would advise. I am only advising on a technical basis. The last part of your question is entirely relevant, of course, in terms of the ability to ensure that it is all sorted out. I genuinely am not in a position to say where things might end up with local government reorganisation and where we might be in 12 to 15 months' time in terms of that situation. So I won't try to go there. Thank you.
I've got Councillor Clark and Councillor Russell, but I just wanted to ask one question. If we were to do a non-immediate approach and we resolve and Cabinet agree that it's the 15 buildings we've talked about tonight, if a planning application comes up during the 12-month period or until we actually finally approve it next year, sometime say June or whatever, does the fact that we're working on an Article 4 have any influence? I'm just conscious that when we've been doing the local plans in the past and the updated one, although the policies weren't formally adopted until March 24 council meeting, prior to that, when we were making decisions, we could reference the upcoming local plan, and as you got closer to its adoption, referencing it had more impact. So would we have any protection like that? Because I'm obviously clear of what Councillor Keeley's saying, obviously the concerns on Invicta.
Yeah, probably not the news that councillors are hoping that I'll provide, but unfortunately, no, it doesn't accrue weight as we go along, unfortunately, Chair. And the problem that also genuinely that I have to raise is that there won't be a planning application because it'll be permitted development. So, we'd probably get a prior notification potentially, but again, restricted, as I say in the report, to specific points that we'd be able to consider. So, yeah, apologies, probably not the best news.
Thank you. Okay, so Brian.
Thank you, Chairman. I think we should be ambitious. We've got a very limited amount of time, but I don't think we should be reckless. I think if we do try for the immediate, we could be embroiled in all sorts of challenges between now and when the unitary comes along. So I think we should take a thoughtful approach and look for a non-immediate. I think that one of the things that was mentioned about the exclusion zone and the other 14, and some of them may not be in that exclusion zone. We had that discussion previously about the mall, the sort of retail area, and additional from the 14 outside of that. So they were sort of split between within that catchment and outside. So I don't think that the fact that this exclusion zone is being discussed, I don't think that bars us from putting forward the 15, as you mentioned, with the one from Invicta House, to officers, because clearly we want to make it known that we want to protect our best office spaces, and Invicta is now one of those, now that it's kind of being thrown into play. So I think that there's clearly work to be done on the exclusion zone. I think we should give officers the freedom to do that, but also with a view for a non-immediate Article 4 on these 15 properties.
Thanks, Claudine, and I think we need to try to...
Yeah, all I was really going to say was that obviously we're an advisory committee, so we can give our advice and then it will go forward, and I'm sure that Cabinet will discuss with the officers and do their recommendation when it goes to them. So happy to move to the vote and go with what was being said about the area, with the obviously knowledge that it's going to need to probably get refined to a better geographical area. And just a point about Article 4 as well, obviously it is good, but essentially all it means is these things need to get proper planning permission. It doesn't mean they're safeguarded in perpetuity forever. It just means that if it happens, any conversion will be a more quality conversion. It can go through planning committee. We could make sure that it's like good design, good form and scale. So, I just didn't want to say, even though it was my motion, I'm very aware that an Article 4 is not a, panacea that actually keeps these in perpetuity. But I think it's very important that we do this for the borough and obviously for the CIL contributions that we know that the borough needs. But I think we should just move to the vote, so I think they can refine it a bit more at their stage.
Sorry, so I'll clarify what I'm understanding is we're recommending to the Cabinet that we proceed with a non-immediate Article 4 direction. And I'll just read out all the buildings which are on page 14. So it's County Gate, Medway Bridge House, 24 to 29 Albion Place, Stirling House, Maidstone House, Romney House, Gow House, Kestrel House, Knight Rider Chambers, County House, Earl Street, 62 Earl Street, 66 Earl Street, 72 King Street, Clarendon Place and Invicta House. Oh, sorry.
Just some of those you've mentioned have already got the Article 4. So we've got Romney House, Stirling House, County House, 70 to 72 Knight Street, Clarendon Place and Knight Rider Chambers. They're the 6 that have. So we obviously don't need to look at the ones that have again.
I mean, we can leave them in there just purely because at the end of the day, they sort of show the sort of the intention of this committee. But I take your point; it's definitely true.
Because when it goes to Cabinet, it can. I mean, they can do that nuance, and I think we should also refer the Cabinet to the work on the exclusion zone, which may also help give protection to office conversions to residential. So if everybody is happy with that, I suppose we better just show hands as shows presumably unanimous. So can I see those in favour? Great, that is unanimous. Thank you everybody, and I think we've come to a fairly good outcome on that, which we shall see. Okay, so, sorry, that takes us on to item 12, which is the third quarter finance update, pages 34 to 44, and I think Councillor Thompson wants to introduce that, and it's supported by Mark Green.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Very good evening to you all. Policy Advisory Committees have budget monitoring in your remit, so this is the third quarter report to you and the projected position for the year coming up. We've got some highlights to draw to your attention. The services reporting to PHSC are projecting a net overspend of £85,000 at the present position. The two largest variances you can see from the figures, which helpfully offset each other, are an overspend of £610,000 relating to Lockmeadow, where there have been some vacant units and expenditures been incurred on the dilapidations at the health club. It's great to see that work's been done there, and there are now lots of new customers coming in and enjoying the swimming pool. It is hoped that some or all of the dilapidations can be recouped from the former tenant, and the officers are working hard on bringing that about. There's also an underspend of £450,000 on planning policy arising from less work being required in-house than was originally assumed. For the whole council, we've got a favourable variance of £654,000 for the current financial year, an improvement on the £197,000 favourable variance that we had projected in quarter two. For the capital part of the budget, there's an underspend of 1.141 million at this present time. The largest item within this is infrastructure delivery, where we've got a budget to allow the council to match fund on key projects as necessary. No expenditure is expected at this current time. There's also a slippage of 228,000 on works at the leisure centre, and obviously in present company I cannot pause at this point, so if I can take you with me to pages 41 and then 43 in the pack, just to explain to you what I needed to check. As members observed as recently as the last full council, we have overlapping and interlocking portfolios, and that makes the reporting a little more complicated. So for clarity, for your benefit, on page 41 where it says open spaces, that arises out of the shared portfolio. So these open spaces here refer to the part of the property and leisure team's work at Moat Park Cafe and the Adventure Zone only. That's not the whole of the open spaces arrangement. And as I know Councillor Harper will be particularly keen to hear, on page 43, the figures for the leisure provision include 500,000 yet to be billed for refurbishment of the changing area at the Lock Meadow Health Club, which leaves a balance of 228,000 that's going to be carried forward to next year, which is the second phase of the Moat Park Leisure Centre, including refurbishing the swimming changing areas, part of the ongoing works to keep that facility in good order. Thank you very much.
Thank you for that, Councillor Thompson. I just had a couple of questions on pages 42 and 43. The leisure centre, because this came up last night at the policy advisory, but the overspend is down to utility costs going up at a higher percentage than is built into our arrangements with Serco. Now, you know, we don't have a crystal ball, but given what's going on in the Middle East at the moment, the evidence looks like utility prices, i.e. oil and gas and so on, are going to go up considerably in the next few months. So if they were, so I suppose the question is, if they do go up higher than the base contract with Serco, presumably the additional costs would fall to the council. Right, okay, I thought that was that. And my other question was, on the leisure provision, which Councillor Thompson spoke about, is the underspend arising from the works we were doing at the Lock Meadow, the old David Lloyd Club, or the works being done in Moat Park Leisure Centre? I wasn't too clear in my mind as to, you know, where the underspend is on which of those two projects.
Underspend.
Well, we've underspent on some capital, and I just wanted to understand whether it was the Lock Meadow, which is the old David Lloyd Club, or Moat Park, which is the Maidstone Leisure Centre.
It's a combination of the two. The leisure provision is managed under a single contract with Serco, and as Councillor Thompson explained, it's partly because of a delay in invoicing on the works that have already been carried out at Lock Meadow, but also the work that is programmed for improvements, the phase 2 improvements at the Moat Park Leisure Centre have slipped. The work will still be carried out, it's just a profiling issue, so 228,000 of the spend will slip into next year.
Anybody else want to ask any questions? Yeah, Donna.
I just wanted to ask on the revenue section about Lock Meadow. Obviously, Gravity went into administration. I assume we're not collecting any rent or anything at all from that at the moment? No? Okay.
Just elaborate on that. We are looking for new tenants for the premises because eventually Gravity will close, and we're hopeful of finding new tenants, but until we do, then that unit isn't generating any revenue.
And the other question, my favourite subject, because the Mayor's swans were enjoying themselves the past few weeks, the flood barrier at the British Gyratory Scheme. Obviously, it says we've spent 5,000 so far this year, so I was just interested what the 5,000 was for, and if we are moving forward at all with this.
We're spending a bit of money with consulting engineers. The position is that we've been asked to resubmit the business case to Kent County Council for this work. We need their permission to carry it out because it is on Highways land. So that's involved a bit of preparatory expenditure, but the bulk of the spend will be on actually constructing the barrier itself.
Councillor Mackay.
Thank you. I should have done my homework before I get here. But, sorry, just to recap. So Serco, who run our gym and at Lock Meadow and at Moat Park, yeah? We have an overspend of approaching £500,000. Is that right?
If you turn to the revenue section on page 41, the overspend there, if you look in the right-hand column, is 186,000. There's two things happening here. You've got the revenue where we're overspending, and the capital where there's slippage.
Sorry, the revenue where you're overspending.
That's right, yeah. Ongoing revenue expenditure, which, as has been alluded to, includes the utilities costs, gas, electricity, and so on. That counts as revenue expenditure. That's what's shown on page 41. Separately, we were talking about capital expenditure, which is one-off, and that's what's shown on page 43. So that's where we're underspending, but we're overspending on the revenue.
When David Lloyd vacated Lock Meadows, presumably we tried to find a tenant for the premises, yeah? I'll take it that as yes.
We did indeed, and this may be before you came back onto the council, councillor, but the best offer was from Serco, so they took over that lease from David Lloyd.
On the same terms as David Lloyd? I doubt it, no. I mean, forgive me, I was a member of a separate gym at the time, believe it or not. I know that's difficult to imagine, but hey, bear with me. But I did take a look at the facilities at Lock Meadow, and I wasn't overly impressed. And I thought, quite frankly, at the time, this was a couple of years ago, a few years ago, and I thought, what? I hope so, from the money we're splashing out. But I thought, what incentive is there for Serco, who already run a very large facility in Maidstone, to invest in one at Lock Meadow? You know, that struck me as being odd.
I mean, I was involved in this, as was Claudine when this was going on. So what the contracts with Serco for Lock Meadow are very different to, if you like, the contract with them for Moat Park Leisure Centre. So the leisure centre is a normal local government contract to run a leisure centre. The Lock Meadow facility, so the old David Lloyd Club, was designed to be a member club contract, so probably very similar to David Lloyd, except it's being run by Serco. So it just happens that we've got Serco running two facilities for us, but one on I suppose a very commercial type approach as a members club, and the other one more of the social remit as a public leisure centre.
Both cost us money.
I mean, the Lock Meadow one shouldn't. Obviously, there's been issues. I mean, it's mainly around dilapidations we're talking about here.
Yes, both are actually net contributors, or should be. The Moat Park one had budgeted surplus of 46,000 for this year. Unfortunately, because of that utilities issue that I talked about, its loss-making this year. Likewise, with the Lock Meadow Health Club, were it not for the issue about the dilapidations, that too would be profitable. They both budgeted to make a surplus. But as Councillor Harper has explained, they're catering for very different markets, albeit that they're run by the
That's
same
maybe,
operator.
but both of them will cost Maidstone Borough Council money this year, and they probably cost us, I'm guessing, last year as well. But anyway, okay, a loss is a loss. You know, when I run a business, I didn't go to my boss and say, yeah, but my sales weren't quite as good as they were the year before, and so I'm forgiven.
Okay, thank you for those comments. If everybody's happy, unless there's anyone, I can't see anyone else indicating, can I draw out? Claire, I hadn't called you yet. You told me to call you if you were falling asleep, but you've woken yourself up. I'll take Councillor Thompson and then I'll move us to the vote.
I would just like the opportunity to pipe up to add my testimony to the record. The transition from David Lloyd to the Serco and MBC partnership was explained to me by officers at the start of my term, and I have to say how hugely impressed I was and am at the nimble and expert efforts that were put into ensuring that all of the people who were minded to be impressed by the new facilities and the potential to look after their health and well-being at the Lock Meadow site were quickly brought on board. There are a number of bureaucratic and technical things that we've rehearsed this evening. I would like members to be fully aware of the brilliant work that was done by officers to keep the community on board and to keep it going viably. That's been very impressive to me, and I thank them for their attention. Thank you.
Thank you. So if we can look on page 35, we've got two recommendations before us, that we note the revenue situation and we also note the capital position. So can I see everyone, all those in favour of those? Anyone? Okay, great. That's you. Sorry? Note. Yeah, sorry, yeah, we noted them. Excellent. Okay. So then if we move on to agenda item 13, which is the neighbourhood planning protocol update, pages 45 to 61, and I assume Councillor Harwood's going to introduce that to us.
Yeah, I'll be brief on this. The neighbourhood planning protocol is updated regularly, and it was last updated in July 2022. So essentially the document is due for a refresh. The report provides information on the factual changes to the protocol to be approved to ensure that the protocol is current and up to date and relevant to staff and external uses, including for parishes. The version of the protocol attached to the report as an appendix highlights the changes made. The track changes will of course be removed as and when the document is agreed as a final version. Thank you.
Thank you for that. Anybody wish to comment on this at all? Councillor Mackay.
Probably not directly onto this, but it connects communities. I'm sure as you're aware that Maidstone Borough Council has been given a huge amount of money to spend over the next 10 years, specifically in Shetway Parkwood. Whose remit will that come under? Will that fall into this? Sorry, it's not the council?
It's not parished, so neighbourhood plans wouldn't apply. I mean, however, there are other approaches that we've taken, but the neighbourhood plans apply to parished areas.
I thought we're likely to create parishes when the town council... But anyway, okay. It doesn't come under the remit here. Fine.
You were referring to the £20 million money, weren't you? That's handled by an independent board, which isn't part of the council. We provide, I think, clerking support to it. A report went up to the housing and community cohesion pack last month. So, yeah, if you look at last month's housing, it had a long report about it, about the governance of it and so on. I just draw everyone's attention, the yellow is obviously the changes, I take it, on the appendix, in which case it's just mainly retightening posts. So if everybody's happy with that, can we agree to whatever we've got to do? Excellent. Which brings us then on to the first of the two conservation areas, which is East Farley. So agenda item 14, East Farley Conservation Area, appraisal and management plan and boundary extension.
Yeah, I think you remember we came on September the 3rd to ask for public consultation. It's a legal requirement. We run the public consultation from the 3rd of October to the 14th of December. We have a public event on East Farley was on the 13th of November. We have now closed the public consultation. We have reviewed the comments. There is no any objection per se. So we're just asking to adopt the new conservation area and the extension.
Thank you. Any, Councillor Conyard?
Thank you, Chair. Given the overwhelming public support off the back of this, unless any members have any comments, can we please just move as per the papers?
We're happy to agree the recommendations. Oh, sorry, Councillor Keeley, you're the ward member. Would you like to say anything? As ward member, would you like to propose the recommendations then? Okay, there you go. Yeah. Right. So that's proposed by Councillor Keeley, and I'm happy to second. So can I just see everybody in favour then? Excellent, that's unanimous. Thank you very much. And I think we should thank all the people who took part in that consultation, which brings us then on to our last item, which starts on page 128, which is the Boxley Conservation Area Appraisal and Management Plan and Boundary Extension.
You just go a bit closer to the mic, so I can't.
Sorry? Yep. No, sorry. Box is the same situation as Farley. They came together in September. The same period of public consultation from the 3rd of October to the 14th of December. And we had a public event on that thing on the 29th of October. And we haven't received any major objection to the extension.
Thank you. If no one wishes to raise anything, given it's all... Oh, Councillor Thompson.
I hesitate to keep the meeting busy with my ward councillor hat on. Through you, Chair, I would like to thank Ingrid and fellow officers, first of all, for accelerating the consideration of Boxley. I think it was languishing somewhere down the bottom of the list. So one of the small things I've managed to have a little bit of influence over as councillor was to encourage folk to boost it up the list. So I'm delighted to see it having come forward at this point. As members here will know, I started as ward member somewhere to the east of Boxley before becoming representative here. I couldn't quite believe my good fortune. I think it's one of the most attractive and historic and rich heritage areas of the entire borough. There are few experiences that are more viscerally stimulating than going through the Lich Gate on a sunny, any season, day of the year, down towards the church. It is stunning. And appreciating this report and seeing how all of the granular details of cattle troughs and post boxes and road signs and all of those sorts of things are all brought together in the conservation area demonstrates how the deeper and more spectacular bits of history come down to the nitty-gritty of everyday life. I welcome this report, the rehearsal of the history, the discovery of how the road has moved from here and there, particularly in Boxley Village over the last couple of centuries. I note that there is mixed reaction to whether or not the waterworks should or shouldn't be noted as being of particular value. Well, given what's happening to our water supply at the moment, I think the residents would be well advised to be as grateful as possible to see how past infrastructure at least worked then, and we very much trust that it will continue to do so. Most pointedly, it really is very exciting to see how the extension of the conservation area at such radical scale, as was the case in East Farley as well. Some very surprising omissions or welcome additions, whichever way it is you want to put it. As we're talking now about neighbourhood plans, as we're talking about village plans, design guides, the new local plan review, all of these potential ingredients, including the conservation areas, mean that we have some sort of bulwark against the march of development. So whatever the future might hold, I welcome this report. Thank officers for their work, the engagement with the public. It's been a privilege to see the opportunity in the parish council for that involvement. So we're very grateful for this, and of course we trust that it does actually offer some protection, but that won't be for lack of effort by our officers. So we're very grateful indeed. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, before I take Councillor Hall, I thought you were going to be inviting us all to a pint at the King's Arms, which is sitting right in the middle of this conservation centre as one of our historic pubs. But anyway, Councillor Harwood.
Yeah, I just wanted to commend the officers for their work on this document, which I think is very good. And interestingly, we talk about the King's Arms. My great-great-grandmother was the licensee at the King's Arms. And next to it was a picture of the War Memorial. And my first name, Tony, is from Tony Brooke, who is on the War Memorial, who I was named after, who was killed in 1944. So there's lots of linkages kind of run through to local people, including me.
That brings us to the end of tonight's meeting. I'd like to thank everybody for coming and see you all in a month's time.